Okay, really good to see that so many are able to be on time for breakfast inspiration. Yeah, so let's start. It's 1 minute after 9 in the times of digital meetings. We are basically mostly on time. So yeah, welcome everybody to the webinar about strategic foresight. So it's all about the future is calling today. We will see how you can unlock tomorrow's potential today. So the webinar will be in English because we also have an international crowd. We will also share some of the slides afterwards with you. Feel free to use the chat function. If you have any questions, please let me know. I have Regina, one of my colleagues, with me here today. She will help me with some technical support and also will cluster the questions a little bit. So use the chat function if you have comments, wishes, questions. I'm making sure that we have some time at the end to answer some of the questions. Yes, so let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Dorothee Stadler. I'm working for the innovation company Hive. I do have a background in business administration, focusing a lot about my passions about user centricity, combining with some strategic thinking. And that's where Foresight fits in perfectly. We can use a lot of creativity. We can also still keep our user centricity in mind, but grounded to our strategic work and company vision. So yeah, I would like to give you a quick glimpse into what strategic foresight is about and why I am so passionate about it. So as it's a morning session, we do have a new format at Hive. It's both online, offline. So we like to do some Hive breakfast inspiration. Sometimes we are doing it at our office in Hive in Munich, sometimes in Vienna, in Switzerland, so different locations. But also we would like to use the place for some online meetings as well. So this time the webinar is taking place online so that most of you can also join independent where you're located at the moment. So let me start with a very nice quote from Carl Schroeder. He's a Canadian science fiction author and a professional futurist. And this covers basically a lot when it's about foresight. So important quote, foresight is not about predicting the future. It's about minimizing surprises. So sometimes it's a lot of questions. How can I predict the future? Basically, the near future is more predictable, yes. But when we look into, let's say, the future of 10, 15, even 20 years, we as a person don't have the ability at the moment to predict. At least it's not possible now. Let's see what the future brings. But we have a lot of methods and tools to minimize the surprises and to be better prepared. So in general, the question is always why thinking about the future is relevant for you personally, but also for you as a company. When we are looking, especially in the last couple of years, we can see that global crisis, a lot of different events have taught us that we are living in a time of a high uncertainty. Change can happen quickly. So we all know what has happened in the last years. And we also know from a technology point of view, change can lead to major disruptions. So when you look at the picture also, the sailing analogy, it's, I think, very fitting to the topic of foresight and how to be prepared. When you're a sailor, when you start a trip, when you do a one-day boat trip, that's fine. You can fully be prepared. You can check the forecast, the weather forecast. You can, do your sailing trip and everything is fine. But if you're going on a sailing trip for a year, let's say, there is no chance that you can know everything in the future, but you can be prepared. You can, when you are planning your trip, you can prepare for the possible instead of trying to adapt in the middle of the storm. There might be storms coming up, yes, for sure. There might be changes, disruptions, and so on, but there are ways how we can prepare ourselves. We can learn to anticipate the future. And for most also, it's when it comes to the mindset, we can also view the change, the new developments as a potential for us as a company and also individually. And that's why I really like the picture, because so far the horizon looks quite soft, very promising, sun is shining, but you never know what's happening in the next couple of hours, years, and so on. And that's where we can work with Foresight. And sometimes when we are imagining the future, it feels very tricky. It feels very difficult for us. And that's quite natural because it has a psychological background. Imagining the future and recalling the memories both use the same area of our brain. So when we're thinking about the future, we stay to our routines mostly, and we are can imagine what is similar to what we already know. But we can train it, we can anticipate the future. And for this part, it's important that we use or allow different perspectives, that we talk to different people, that we read a lot, that we use different kind of inspiration. So this multiple perspectives comes into mind so that our memory also get recalled new information, new perspective, and that will help us way easier to also anticipate alternative futures and trends. At Hive, we follow basically the 3 pillars of how we help our companies, our clients to tackle innovation challenges. In the core, it's still the product innovation, so bringing insights into tangible ideas, and then also to the product development, so really creating value, creating new innovations for our users. But sometimes, and that's very relevant still for when we're thinking about filling our product portfolio for the next years. But sometimes we also could see that companies, when it's about the vision, they are fully aware of what is happening in the next 10 years? How can they be prepared, and how can they prepare the innovation teams to apply the right selection criteria, to let's say start also on the right search fields, on the right opportunity areas? And that's where strategic foresight comes into the play. It's a very strategic oriented driven tool set, and it really helps companies and helps you also, if you apply it on a personal note, to anticipate possible and plausible futures, different futures, but you can act now. And that's where I would like to focus on in this webinar, and to start with maybe a quick definition. There are multiple definitions out there, but I really like this one. So foresight is a process that is very systematic. So you can or you need to think in systems, and it's very future intelligence gathering and medium to long-term vision building. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're thinking about creating or using the foresight process for the next 2-3 years, so thinking about the future for the next 2 or 3 years, that's not where you need foresight. You can go with your innovation projects, you can use user research methods, but the more we're going into the future, 5, 10, 15 years, the harder it will get to apply our traditional innovation methods. And that's where foresight will help us to really apply the right methods and tools. And another very important aspect here, foresight, it's, yes, we are working and dealing with futures, but its aim is to enable and support decisions made today, so we can actively shape our future. And I really like the triangle of future thinking and foresight. So whenever I'm doing foresight projects or talking about future, I invite you to think in different futures, to think about the future. It has such a different, it's a very easy exercise to always think, what can I be in 10 years, 15 years? What will I do? Where will I be? What kind of technologies I'm using? So thinking in different futures and different future scenarios is step one. Then also allow debating the future. As I mentioned, we don't know it for sure, but we can work with assumptions, with hypotheses. So it's actually, it would be weird if we are not discussing it, if we all agree on the same aspect. So it should be a debating, it should be a discussing, to bring in multiple perspectives and to evaluate them, to also think from a different angle. So foresight is all about also debating the future. And I mentioned that a couple of times so far, it's about shaping the future. We can't change everything, yes, I know, but each of us has a certain impact on us as a person, on us as a team, but also on our company. So by thinking about the future, by applying foresight, but anticipating the future, every one of us can actively shape parts of our future. And strategic foresight for me also works in the combination of these two aspects. So of course you need to know and be aware of the right tools, methods, and models. You need to have the good academic background for that so that you know how to apply foresight. But only the tools won't help you. If your company, if the team is not thinking in the future or has very hard times to thinking about the future, you can have as many good tools, but you won't be successful. Also, on the other hand, if you're crazy future thinkers, you really open for everything, for new perspectives, but you don't know how to apply foresight, you won't be successful. So it's the combination of the tools, the methods, but also of preparing with future thinking mindset. And that's where thinking in systems and collaboration comes to the mind. So work with tools, work with partners, include different experts also, and see the whole system as a future system. So that's where I believe when you combine these two factors, you can have very successful future foresight work. Before also starting foresight work, you need to think about certain aspects. First of all, where do you want to start with foresight work? Do you want to apply it on an overall corporate level? Means highly strategic, means that the whole corporate vision is impacted? Or is it for a business unit? Is it for a department, for a function on a product level? Everything is fine. So foresight does not always have to be this major, big company corporate level view. It can also be for a business unit, for a certain category of products, but you need to be aware of it. Where are you taking the foresight steps and who to involve? For each different areas, the main decision makers need to be on board. You can only be successful if you include them right away, if you have to buy in, because it will change the vision, or it will change some strategic direction. So it's crucial to know the context, to know your industry, to know where you're applying the foresight to be successful. And the other one is also the time horizon. So as I mentioned, select the time horizon wisely, also define it, because it will have a different impact if we are, when I'm going more into the scenario work now, are we creating scenarios for a future in the next 10 years or 20 years? These scenarios will look like differently. And also when selecting the right time horizon, keep in mind your industry. Is it an industry with a very fast pace, or are they developing slower? So there are different aspects you need to consider. How far can you go and how far should you go? When we are thinking about the classical strategic foresight process, is about the first step is also envisioning your future industry. So I would always highly recommend, don't step too fast and imagine your future business. Allow the different perspective, allow the outside look to your industry, because you don't know, are the market players still the right ones, are the same ones in the next years, or are you dealing with a different environment? So usually we like to work here with the innovation radar. I will come to that in a couple of seconds. Then when you created the vision of your future industry, you then have to, of course, ground it into your business. So imagine how your future business could look like, work with different aspects here as well. And then don't stop here, because then the hard work will start actually, because you need to make clear decisions. You need to decide what are the actions you need to take, what are the key topics you are focusing on, and then do the innovation roadmap planning, the responsibilities, and so on. But I will deep dive into the topic in a few minutes. So let's focus especially on this webinar on scenario planning, how scenario planning can help you to make the right or more informed decisions about the future. And as I mentioned, scenario planning is one of the tools we are using a lot. And that's why when we're thinking about the future, it's hardly ever one-dimensional. So the more we go into the future, the higher the uncertainty is. And then thinking in scenarios will really help us to make decisions now. And the word scenarios is important. It's not just one scenario, as I mentioned. you need to think in different scenarios. You need to allow the multiple perspective aspect. So scenarios, when you are having a more deep dive into the topic, they are stories about the future. And I can't stop to repeating that, but their purpose is to make better decisions in the present. Yes, it's a lot of future-driven work, but you need to use the work now. You need to decide now on what to do with it, how to plan for it, how to prepare for it. So there are different, let's say, different versions of futures, and that comes to the time frame. So if we are thinking about certain developments that are most likely happen, we are dealing with probable futures. So probable futures are scenarios that project current trends. They are considered to likely happen. So some scenarios within these futures are more likely happen to others, but they are, let's say, closer to what we know. Then there are plausible futures. Plausible futures are scenarios built from current understanding of technologies. And here also we know how things work. So these futures could happen. And then it gets interesting. Possible futures, the more we're going into the future, the more uncertainty we have, are projections of knowledge we do not yet possess so far. So they are bringing new perspectives, new topics. And this includes a lot of events outside of what we know, what we are kind of expecting. And these future, they might happen, but they also might not happen. So that's where we are dealing with the high uncertainties. And when we are looking into what should be useful scenarios look like, or what aspects should we consider, first of all, focus on plausible and possible scenarios. Make them internally consistent. So if they are not consistent, if they are not credible, you lose also the management team to really work with the scenarios. They need to be logically assembled. So they need to be data-driven, based on trends, patterns, but from different perspectives, from different evaluations, but assemble them logically so you don't have any questions around that. And most important, also relevant for decision makers. So they need to be really relevant. Decision makers need to understand them. They need to see the usefulness of such scenario work. So without them, you can't actually go one step further. So you need to have the relevant decision makers on board and make them relevant for them, and especially by integrating them right from the beginning. So when we are going, let's say, a bit more deeper in the scenario planning, I like to divide it into 3 steps. So first one is prepare. So before creating scenarios, what do we have to do? It's about identification of the key drivers of change and their evaluation. So when we are starting our process, we are always preparing for 4 dimensions. So we are starting with the strategy and the capabilities. It's more a mapping of what the strategic directions are so far. So everything your stakeholders know, all strategic decisions that are made, visions, so that we map them, that we have that ready. We're also looking into market and regulation. So are there any regulative change for the industry? This is very important because a new law or regulation can really impact the future vision a lot. So also benchmarking, are the competitors still the same, or are we dealing with different ones in the future? And then we bring in the relevant drivers also from trends and technology. So identifying opportunities based on new developments in the startup field, trend reports. So there's a lot what we can screen, talking to experts and futurists. And then, of course, always considering also what from the planet and people perspective. So what are future needs, society shifts, planetary demands. So there is a lot of you can include, but always keep in mind that you cover these 4 dimensions to allow the multiple perspective. And as I also mentioned, include experts, out of the box thinkers as well. You as a company, yes, you have really good experts in your field, but you need to bring in multiple perspective to also change your perspective. So one field could be trend receivers who really have a high context experience. They're curious, they're open-minded, they can evaluate trends quite well. And then for me, they're always kind of a networker profile, and they don't call themselves trend receivers, so you need to identify them and wisely, or other expert fields in different or in a specific domain you don't have so far. And another inspiration for preparing for scenario work could also be from science fiction movies. And here I would like to show you two scenes which seem quite normal nowadays. But for me, yeah, screenwriters who are able to write such movies are natural future thinkers. They have such a strong ability to anticipate the future. I don't know if we have people here in the audience, kids from the 80s. So you probably know when Knight Rider was released in the 80s. So that's almost 40 years ago, crazy. And let's see a quick sequence of what we could see as a movie in the 80s, which was completely out of the mind.
All right. Might as well put on some music. All these weird gadgets, you'd think they'd give you a radio.
What would you like to hear?
What the hell was that?
Do you wish further information on Silicon Valley?
Hell no. I want to know who you are and how you're listening in.
There's no reason for increased volume. I am scanning your interrogatives quite satisfactorily. I am the voice of Knight Industry 2000's microprocessor. KITT for easy reference. A kit if you prefer.
No, I don't prefer. And what's more, I don't intend to drive around in a car that talks back to me, so either Devin pulls your plug or you get yourself another driver.
I am not.
So nowadays, it's completely normal. When we enter our car, we are talking to our car naturally. But in the 80s, it was very new. It was very future driven. You can't imagine that. So here also, looking back now to the movies, it's quite interesting to realize that, yeah, maybe this was also the starting point, the reasons for Siri, Alexa, and all the developments we have at the moment. And also for current crisis. So I don't know if some of you have seen the movie Contagious. It was from 2011, and it's
leaving you.
Crazy.
We have 47 cases.
How we
and
could
8
see that
deaths
the
as of
pandemic
5 this
was
afternoon. It's a
mapped
weekend.
in this movie.
These numbers
as
might be
well.
low. People are staying home for a couple of days, see if they get any better.
So at this point, I think we have to believe this is respiratory. Maybe fomites, too.
What's that, fomites?
It refers to transmission from surfaces. The average person touches their face 2,000 or 3,000 times a day.
2,000 or 3,000 times a day?
3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, elevator buttons, and each other. Those things become fomites.
Is this something we want to release to the press, respiratory and fomites?
And how's the public going to react to that?
It's hard to say. Plastic shark in a movie will keep people from getting in the ocean, but a warning on the side of a pack of cigarettes will
We're going to need to walk the
corner
governor
story.
through this before we start to freak everybody
more.
out. I mean, we can't even tell people right now what they should be afraid of. We tried that with swine flu, and all we did was get healthy people scared. It's the biggest shopping weekend of the year.
I think we need to consider closing the schools down.
And who stays home with the kids? People that work at stores, government workers, people that work at hospitals. When will we know what this is? What causes it? What cures it?
So also seeing and screening the comments, I mean, it's crazy shocking how the movie kind of anticipated also a lot what we were dealing with in the last couple of years. So I remember here when you see the quotes, I remember first watching this and thinking about how absolutely wild it'd be for us. And then some of the scenes actually happen. So I really like that, to use it as an inspiration. Of course, still it's sci-fi, but it's about multi perspectives. And also, when we go one step further, so looking at the current movies, we see some crazy developments as well. So just a quick snippet in 2 movies which are out now. So The Pod Generation, maybe just a quick about how babies might be carried out in eggs in the future.
What's going on? Maybe it's hungry. When was the last time you fed the pod?
Oh, I don't remember. Like a couple of hours ago, I think.
You're not sure?
Well, it's in the app. How can I be expected to remember the exact time of the last feeding?
Baby's only been there for a day.
Where's my phone?
You need the phone to know if the baby's hungry.
Well, it's in the app. Are you trying to make...
So it's also quite interesting how the movies capture society, let's say, shifts or topics, because who's taking care of the baby? It's always like a female-driven topic now, but in the future, if it's carried out in X, how is the role then? And this movie showed it quite shocking. And also from an emotional side, if you've seen the movie Black Mirror, where each interaction is rated, it's crazy to see how we are in the middle of the development with some apps we all know, and how emotional, shocking, and also sensitive such topics can be if you evaluate each emotion.
It's on the house.
Sounds awesome. See you tomorrow, JJ.
See you, Lacey.
Oh, saw your boy in the fire hat just...
So I invite you to, whenever you watch movies from the future, maybe think about what could have an impact for us, what could be imaginary thinking, and what could come reality. So just another source of inspiration, but I think it's quite impressive how screenwriters come up with these stories, on what kind of aspects these stories are based, and very natural future thinkers in my mind. So as soon as we have prepared everything, we have included different perspectives. We have a good, let's say, information of the key drivers, of the relevance, evaluation of the drivers, the uncertainty. We want to go into envision and co-create, meaning scenario workshops, so turning the key drivers into actionable scenarios. And what are the key important factors when we are going into future scenario workshops? So first of all, think about the stakeholder involvement. So who should be part of the creation process? Select the participants carefully, include a good mix of relevant stakeholders. So as I mentioned a couple of times now, you need to have the involvement, but also allow creative minds to come up with the scenarios. Prepare a guided flow. So guide the process, guide the workshops through the participants through the process with an appealing agenda, place the inspiration, place the information about the drivers in the right order on the right time. And also these workshops are really great for empowering your team, for establishing future thinking. So this will help you a lot to use it also for further work, and also open the environment. So we need to have a creative setting for future thinking, but we also need to set the stage. So what are the expectations? What can we get out of workshops, and what needs to be further processed? Also for the management, what is happening in these workshops, so they know how maybe creative it will be. And a critical point also, sometimes we tend to do a lot of positive thinking, positive scenarios, which I'm a really big fan of as well, but really allow also critical thinking, allow extreme and negative scenarios to avoid a positive bias I can sometimes see on projects. Then visual power and storytelling. When scenarios are developed, it's always good to include some design power. Strong visualizations will really help you to have the buy-in from the different stakeholders, and also the storytelling, how you're telling the scenarios are very crucial to make it more tangible. And then we are doing a lot of scenario workshops. It's just one part of the big process, because scenarios, they need to evolve, they need to be further enveloped. So take time for proper post-processing, discuss the scenarios, challenge them, further develop them, to work with them in the next step. So a lot of aspects you need to consider, but we're always a big fan of scenario workshops. It's a lot of open-minded participants we can see, and it's fun on the one hand side, but it's also strategically highly relevant to think in the different futures and to think about different scenarios, and always develop, as I mentioned, multiple scenarios, because the future is not one-dimensional, and we need to work with different scenarios for the industry. So here's some visuals, how we imagine our future visions, which is way more visual than just having a text. And then last but not least, execute and drive. So you be in the driver's seat, you need to bring it to action. So use the scenarios as a tool. It's just a milestone in the whole process of foresight. Use the scenarios to define clear opportunities and actions. So how can you turn scenarios into strategic directions? So apply the classical strategic frameworks like the SWOT analysis. So you know about your strengths and your weaknesses. When based on the different scenarios, what kind of opportunities do you see? What kind of threats might evolve in the future? And identify new opportunities and threats for you as a company. Ensure also that the scenario work can influence directions, because what are you doing if you see there are new impacts, new opportunities, which can be highly relevant for you, but the team is not able or not willing to change some of the strategic directions. This will be highly critical. And backcasting is also a method we are applying here a lot, so I don't want to deep dive here too much, but it's like really thinking about the future's opportunities, going back to the status quo now, what needs to happen, what could be push factors, what can also be barriers to fulfill our goals. So grounded in the strategic work. Here is where the strategic work needs to come to mind to go from a more creative approach to a highly strategic decision making. Also the cultural change. So when you want to apply foresight on an ongoing base, you need to foster a culture of future critical thinking. And in general, this will improve your whole company's adaptability skill. So quite relevant, I think. I also like to see it as a discipline. So it's not a sprint where we do it once and then we are successful. No, you need to see it as a regular discussion. You need to work, adapt, challenge the scenarios, do regular reviews, updating your key assumptions. So this is really kind of, if you do it in a very best way, install a discipline in your team that someone is always really looking for. Into the topic of the scenarios. Then horizon scanning is also very important here as well. So as I mentioned, you can't use the autopilot here. Everything is going in one direction. No, you need to stay active. You need to follow up on future developments, identify on the horizon some new signals of change so that you can readapt your scenarios, your strategies, or always be fully prepared and have someone looking into the horizon and encourage these out of the box thinking. And last but not least, responsibilities. Yes, it is a lot of work. It needs to, you need to stay active. You need to work on your skills as well, but you only can be successful if after the scenarios are done, after the opportunities are identified, if you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities. So who is taking care of certain tasks, who is leading the process. So foresight work needs commitment on the one hand side, but it also needs ownership. So as a last point, I really would like to mention that because everyone likes to join these workshops, but when it's about the hard work, you need to have the team on board to be fully focused and go through maybe also some critical times and harder times, but it will work out. And it's very it can be very successful if you have the commitment and the ownership of the topic. Some best practices, so you also know how we applied foresight for some of our clients. So one topic we recently dealt with is how the future of gambling could look like. So here in 10 years, you see a classical view into gambling, a casino world, and our client was thinking about when preparing the next strategic direction, thinking in a 10 years time horizon, how will the future of gambling look like? They are acting on a global level and they want to have a view into the holistic scene. So we did a lot of research from different aspects, interviews, trend research, desk research, looking into new regulations as the gambling world is also highly regulated. So we need to be aware of what is happening here. The environmental issues, a lot of new technologies coming here into mind, and also society shifts. So we identified some key drivers of the gambling world and then worked with the 2.2 matrix. So we selected 2 key drivers with a high uncertainty. One was the business model situation. So will we in 10 years still be fully focused on a gambling experience? So the gambling plays are also in the focus. You go into a casino because you want to gamble. Or from a business model perspective, are we fully focused on our overall entertainment experience? Do we get a shift from gambling as something maybe even bad to a more fully entertainment for the whole family, for everyone, inviting to enjoy some free and playful times? This was one X, and the other one was finding new ways to play. So are we still working with classical conservative games like the classical roulette, the slot machines, or do we are dealing with a lot of new innovative games like VR, XR, and so on? And based on these two axes, we came up with 4 different scenarios. Some were very future driven, some were very integrating new technologies, a lot of gambling immersion and so on. But we could also imagine with some counter trends that we might still have classical games, but with a new innovative change. And we can also still focus on a gambling world. So just here, one glimpse into one scenario. Of course, AI is driven, AI is supported, the whole flow of the casino, but still you see some important aspects, which has also kind of a heritage feeling for some of the gamblers. So different scenarios, and the goal was not to decide on one scenario. The goal was to use these scenarios as a starting point for discussion, for strategic implication, and that worked really well. And yeah, we were allowed to show the scenarios because they were also mapped in a booklet to shown to different parties, very public. So it was quite nice. Also the openness of the client to see how they're communicating their scenarios and how they are working with the scenarios. Another topic a couple of years ago we did for Audi, it's about how we can use the space of the car when autonomous driving is getting it at a maturity level. So new time, new space, new interactions, new social gatherings. So we did a global study, a lot of interviews with trend receivers, partnerships with universities, society trends, public trends. So a lot of topics came into play here, and we even built this low fidelity prototype to when we were doing the interviews that the participants are fully immersed into the topic, so they could really feel how big the space would be, what they can do, how they would interact. So with some animations and so on, it was quite nice to immerse in the topic. And the result were different use cases for autonomous driving for the company Audi, and they're still working with it. They can use the work for multiple aspects. So it was not identifying this one scenario, it was working with different useful scenarios and deciding on what kind of innovation potential do we have, how well are we prepared for certain use cases. So quite interesting to think about also different perspectives, how you can immerse in the preparation phase into the topic as well. And then sometimes it's also not needed to be completely out of the mind. So to still have it grounded in real consumer needs. So thinking in a world, let's say 2030 here as well for a global food company, we went in also to created different scenarios and went into the natural aspects of life. So how are we shopping how do we do our shopping in the future? How will we work? How will we go from A to B? How is our social interaction taking place? How and where are we living? What are we eating? What we are consuming? So it was dealing with the major consumer aspects everyone can relate to, and we came up with 4 very different scenarios, and that was a good starting point for strategic discussions as well, to see when it comes to further product development on which topics they should further focus on. So it's blurry because we are not allowed to show them, but just to get a glimpse into different areas of how scenarios could look like. It can show a full scenario, it can show a full world, it can be more drawings, it can be more like working with real pictures, or it can be very consumer driven and thinking about the main aspects of life. It can have also the look into a future of a world, of a city. So it's very diverse. You just need to be aware of what you're doing and how you want to apply it and what you want to make use of it. And that's where I'm coming to slowly to an end of the webinar. So what are the key takeaways you should hopefully get out of this webinar? So first of all, framing and goal setting. As I mentioned it a couple of times, take your time. It is, I know, also very time resource consuming. So take your time to frame the challenge, to define your key requirements, be aware of the context you are dealing with, how complex is it. When we are having a shared goal at the beginning, it's way easier to go through the flow. Think in collaboration. So I know time is also critical, but for the Foresight process, it's important to involve the stakeholders at least sometimes in the process. Set the level also high enough so that you have to buy in right from the beginning and think beyond your industries when integrating different perspectives from trend receivers, experts, technologies, startups, and so on. Then third one also, Foresight is not only about the tools, the mindset. So it really needs to have a change of mindset. You need to stop fearing the future and see it more as a change, or see the change as an opportunity. So allow critical thinking, allow different perspectives, different viewpoints, and then the team will be empowered as well. And yeah, you will hit way easier to really anticipate futures. Discipline, I mentioned this one as well. So really regularly analyze trend technologies. Don't stop when creating scenarios. Keep going, keep working on it. Be strict, be consistent. This will help you also a lot in the process. Impact. So use Foresight work to support, to make informed decisions. As I mentioned, it's not about we are just having fun and dealing with it. No, it's really about making informed decisions, data-driven decisions, informed decisions to reduce our risk in highly risk situations. And then innovation. We are an innovation company, so we use Foresight processes as a starting point. Sometimes work has been done, or we will have our clients with the Foresight work, but strategic Foresight also enables revolutionary innovation and serves as a good starting point for innovation activities. So this would be it for the webinar. Thank you so much for listening, for staying active. And yeah, I would stop sharing my screen and be open for questions, comments, input.
Okay, thanks so much, Doro, for this great presentation. During the presentation, I recognized at the moment 3 questions. If there are further questions, just raise your hand. I can give you the rights to speak. But there was a question how we sell strategic foresight and how can this be measured today's effort in the accounting balance?
Yeah, that's always a big topic. So for me, it's also here a change of mindset and thinking. So when you're dealing with the near future, you can have key measurements, you can have clear goals for that. So you can have accountability by thinking what happened in the past to see what kind of influence have had it on a success or not a success. But this is actually a very critical topic, or highly discussed topic, because when you look into 10, 15 years and prepare the Foresight work, it's hard to measure it right away. You can measure it by how is your team empowered from an accountability. Are you investing in the right resources? They could have or in other words, allow what the measurements should measure. So short-term, mid-term, and long-term. For short-term, you can also define criteria, maybe one, technology maturity, how well are you adapting, and so on. But to be honest, the same in innovation, it's sometimes hard to really have clear numbers for it, it's actually, for me, again, a change in mindset. If you are going into the accountability right away or clear measurements, it will be hard because we don't can measure it right away, but we have certain ways how to make it more accountable. So I hope that answers the question somehow, but yeah, it's still, I think some research needs to be done to also come up with new measurements of foresight work. But yeah, you should more think it as to be prepared for short-time success as well and include it in a certain way into your numbers. But really good question and really good discussion. That's probably another topic for another webinar.
Okay. A further question was, there's the opinion that at the moment it's kind of a negative basic mood in the media. So how do we deal with this bias? What do you say to this?
Yes, I mean, true, there is, when you look in all the news media, you always are confronted with negative news, but I think every one of us can change that. So change how you see the news, how you deal with it. So again, it's a lot about the mindset. Of course, we need to consider that from an economic point of view, we are living in critical situation, but what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you as a company? How can you get out of this negative loop? How can you change it? Because we can only change it as a society from a government point of view. We can't influence everything, but we as a person can always influence how we start our day, how we are working together. And we need to have the critical aspect, as I mentioned. Don't be biased by positivism. Not everything is positive, but tackle challenges with the positive mindset. Because we can either look on all the news and be negative, stay negative, be frustrated, or we can change and tackle the aspects we are able to tackle now. So again, mindset shift, but be aware of these issues and see how these issues will also, challenges will also impact you as a company or you as a person.
Okay, so another question, it's a little bit longer, so I hope it's okay to just read it for you. There was a question, how can the attention and importance of the topic be anchored in particular with the management and the supervisory board? And there's the opinion, I have often found that future work is one of the first items to fall victim to cost-cutting programs in challenging business situations. Also, this is precisely what can show how ways out of the situation.
Yes, long question. I try to capture everything I heard. So management, top management, as I mentioned, we need to have the buy-in. It's of course same with innovation, foresight. Resources will be cut easily in critical situation, but especially in these times, it's even more important to include strategic thinking, to include foresight work, because you are probably already in the middle of the storm. So you probably should have done your work a little bit earlier, but you still can do the work. So even I'm totally getting it from a business point of view, how to deal with cost reductions. But as a management team, I would always try to allow to a certain point this foresight work as well. And if you are part of the team, bring them in, show them why it's successful, show them how it can impact the future. It does not always have to be big scale and everything. Start small successes, start with on a certain level, but independent of that, if you don't have your management team included or on board, it will be tough to be successful, because it is highly strategic. It is placed in the vision, in the strategic direction. So actually there's almost nowhere around to not include them, and work hard, be consistent, always address the topic. Don't give up, bring it to the table a couple of times. Don't get frustrated. There will be a time where management will also see it and then you will have a major impact. But yeah, consistency, mindset again.
This leads me to another question. I think it fits here quite well. How do you ensure that the right stakeholder participate in the futuring workshops? If there are there any selection criteria, and how many participants do you recommend?
Yeah, a lot of different aspects here. So select wisely. So there are selection criteria always depending on the topic, on the scope, and so on. So there are also multiple forms of including. So if some people are really not biggest workshop fans, or they don't want to join or don't have time, do interviews beforehand, bring in the perspective, capture their thoughts and thinking, and bring that into the workshop. In the workshop, you should have active participants, open-mindedness, different categories, different business units, different positions, age, gender. So all the different aspects should be covered, but you need to make sure that, they are open to create the scenarios. They are open to do role playing, do creative work. Sometimes you also need to trigger them. So don't, or be open that they also can change throughout the workshop. So that's also why I think it's a good empowerment tool. But if it's really time critical, or some people are absolutely do not want to join, or don't have time, or are not the right persons, bring in the perspective anyway into the workshop by including interviews beforehand. And then from the number, it depends. So it should not be too small, it should not be too big. So anything between 7 to 15, 18 participants. So when we are doing it as an agency, depending on the participant number, we are bringing in more micro moderation experts from our side as well, so that we really have time to go into scenarios and work with them. So yeah, but different, as I mentioned, multiple different perspectives from the participant side, but also from the input you're bringing in as an inspiration, as an information. You need to allow as many different perspectives as possible to come up with great scenarios.
Okay, and there was also a question, what AI tools would you recommend to support the Foresight process, maybe as a co-pilot?
Yeah, there are multiple tools you can use. I mean, for the trend research, for the screening, there are great tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, other sources. I'm not the AI expert here, so I would reference for this question to one of my colleagues, and can, if it's interested, follow up on these questions. But on a general level, you can use it for getting inspiration, but still I would not underestimate still the power of doing also traditional research and interviews. And then for the creation process, you can use it as an inspiration for scenarios as well, like Midjourney and so on, but include design experts as well to really bring it to life, use it as a starting point, and then let you help by design experts to, bring in more deepness into the visualizations as well.
Okay, maybe the last question from the audience. What are your thoughts on how to foster an innovative or future culture within companies?
Yes, very good question. I like that a lot. So first of all, yes, there are methods and tools you can use, or you can do something, but it takes time. So as a behavior needs time to change, allow time for change. Always allow critical thinking, open-mindedness, do different creative exercise. So take one topic and let the team create different scenarios for you as a company, for on a certain topic, or for a city, for a major aspect in your life. So it's practicing your brain on the one hand side, but it's also time to allow people to change, to adapt new behaviors. but I think an openness, an open mindset for different thinking, it's also very crucial. And then include exercises, small exercises. We have one expert here at Hive as well for creative inspiration. Rebecca, she's always really good in bringing in some new expertise here as well. So there are a lot of smaller tools, tasks, some tasks which is or exercises which only takes a couple of minutes, but it helps you to activate your brain and to allow more creative thinking as well. But time, commitment, openness, and then find good role models for the topic as well, so they can help others to jump or join the creative train.
Okay. Yeah, maybe a last question from my side. What fascinates you personally for the Foresight topic, or what also brought you to the Foresight topic? I realize you're really passionate about this topics. Yeah, perhaps just some last opinions.
Yes, as I hope all of you could see, I'm really passionate about the topic. And actually, it came out through my time here at Hive. So I'm working here for the company for more than 13 years. And I started a lot with the consumer centricity, did a lot of research, co-creation, ideation workshops, and so on. But sometimes I could really see from the client side, they are fully engaged into the innovation topic. But when it comes to what kind of ideas are you selecting, what is your company actually planning to do, not in the next couple of years, but really in 10, 15 years, I could see some can't really answer the question properly. And I really got fascinated by the topic. How can we help companies, teams to have a strategic direction, a strategic vision, future picture of how the company could look like in 10, 15 years to have innovation projects successfully done now. So the combination of including strategic foresight, strategic thinking, scenario work in the beginning, and then use it but as a starting point for innovation, for creating valuable, meaningful new products. I think this combination really fascinated me a couple of years ago. And then we did some really cool projects also here at Hive for different clients. And I become more familiar with the topic, and I really love talking about it because it's such a highly relevant topic. Not now, it got more prominent throughout the crisis and the different events, but dealing with it, it's amazing how you can change, how you can anticipate, how you can help companies, people, not only on a company, on a business side, but actually also on a personal and private side. So there are a lot of tools or thinkings I'm also applying in my private connection. So it's actually quite nice to apply it on a more holistic level as well. So yeah, very cool topic, very fitting to the innovation topic overall, and always good to talk about it.
Great. Yeah, well, I think it's nearly 10 o'clock. I think it was planned to have it until 10 o'clock. I also mentioned if there are further questions, just feel free to send it via email. We are open to answer also the question afterwards. And yeah, Doro, perhaps your last words.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I can see most of you really stayed until the end. A lot of questions are always like different questions. So feel free to reach out to us. We do have our innovation updates coming once in a month, so you can register here as well. And if you have any questions, if you want to talk about the topic in a coffee call, reach out to me. I will share my contact information in the recap as well. And yeah, let's change our mindsets, start foresight thinking, start future thinking, and happy to have more follow-up conversations with each of you, maybe on an individual personal level. Thank you so much. Hope you had a good morning breakfast inspiration and a wonderful rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.